Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's ServiceNow Express video blog in the Geneva release on the concept of business rules. Business rules in ServiceNow Express are your way to automate business logic. Based off the insert or update of any record, you can trigger a message to appear, the action to be aborted to prevent it from occurring, or the ability to set fields on that current record that was inserted or updated, or any field on a record that's being referenced by that record being inserted or updated. Let's take a look at what creates a business rule, as well as some of the common use cases where you'll find yourself creating a business rule. From within business logic, you'll see a business rules section. We can also get there by searching for business rules in our upper left-hand navigator. In both cases, it'll take us to our list view of your currently active business rules in the system, as well as those that are not active. You could see that by this active column, where you could filter the ones that are running with a quick right-click, show matching on true, or a filter out. In most cases, you're going to be interested in the rules on a specific table. Let's take the incident table, for example. Usually the quickest way to get to a specific table's business rule, simply open a record on that table, right-click, and go to Configure Business Rules. And that'll automatically filter down just to the rules on that table. Now, one of the things that I'm going to highlight here is that you'll notice it says table equals incident or table is in incident, task. And that's because this incident table has a hierarchy to a parent task table. Meaning if you create business rules on the task table, all child tables below task, like incident, problem, change, and so on, will be affected. So what we're going to do in this case, however, is we're going to take a look at creating a new business rule. Now I'm going to create two new business rules for this first example. One that'll run on insert, and the other that will run on update. Now, that's what triggers a business rule to run. It isn't something that occurs immediately, such as the moment a form value is changed, it calculates something, or it sets a field value. Rather, what it does is it runs on submission, on update. Anytime you right-click, press save, anytime you press update, or you submit a new record, and a field has changed, that's what triggers this insert or update. So I'm going to start by just showing the difference between the two. The first one's going to be our insert rule. We're going to call this our insert example. And the action that we're going to take, we'll get into this later. We're just going to give a quick message saying insert. And I'm going to go ahead and submit that. I'm going to create a second rule, and we're going to call this our update example. I'm going to select to run on update. And then what we're going to do is the actions, we're going to just add a quick message saying update. And I'm going to go ahead and submit this one as well. And what you'll notice is now when I come in and I create a new instance, so a brand new one from scratch, pressing create new, maybe going in through the self-service portal, record producer, and so on. And I make my new instance. If I saved it, or if I was to go in and submit it, basically creating this new record, what you'll see is it's inserted. And that'll run an inserted business rule. Keep in mind, inserts only happen once. So for this record, you'd only ever see the inserted run once, the first time it's made. Update, on the other hand, runs every single time the criteria is met. For an update to occur, you need to save or update after a field value is changed. So you'll notice right now I'm saving, it's not doing anything because the field value didn't change. But the moment I do make a change, let's say I say the CI is Annie's IBM here, and I go ahead and I press save, you could see it's now updated. And that works for if I right-click save or if I make a change and I press update. In both cases, it'll trigger that update. and it'll trigger every time you save or update when a field has changed. Which brings us to the first important concept of business rules, which is choosing exactly the conditions for when your rule should run. And let's take a look at our update example to start. Right now, we're basically saying anytime a business rule updates, no matter what on the incident table, pop up this message. But the whole point of business rules is generally to enforce business logic, automation if you will, based off of conditions that you decide. So here, for example, I could put the condition in saying only when the short description is test do I want to run this rule. And the reason I'm going to say is explicitly is that's another important distinction to make. Every single time I save or update with an is, as long as that is matched to test, it'll go ahead and it'll run this rule. Now in most cases though, you only want it to run once when it matches. So for those cases, you want to use changes to, and we'll see that in a second. Right now, I'll leave it at is. We're going to come in to an incident record, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to do an update. So let's just say this is the update, and I'll save. And you'll notice no pop-up because the criteria is not met. Short description must contain test, or is test in my case. So I'll say test. This time when I save, it updated. And every single time while it's at test and I make different changes here in the system, it'll go ahead and it'll cause this update. Because every time it runs, it rechecks is test, yes. Therefore, proceed with the message. Now, the opposite of this is using the changes to logic. And that'll only run the first time because when it changes to that value. So you'll notice I'm going to come back in, go to my business rules here, and I'm going to go to my update example, and we're going to pick short description changes to test. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now, when I go in and I make an update, let's say it's at test, we'll say test A just to force that initial change. And from test A, it switches to test, same way it triggered before. So now, as we can see, yes, it did update because it changes to test. But now, if there was a change to occur, I'll add myself, for example, to this additional signing list. And I go ahead and save. Even though it was an update, it's not triggering because it wasn't a change. The value is the same. So this is great for a one-time match. You use the changes to logic. Now, business rules, though, they're really about setting those conditions up, generally with contained statements, with matches, with something that is dynamic in many cases. So let's run through an actual first example that'll actually run on insert and update, because you could do both. It's not exclusive. So here I'm going to go to configure, I'm going to go to my business rules, and now that we understand the difference between insert and update, I'm going to make myself a new rule. I'm going to call it my VIP flagger. And I'm basically going to say, anytime an incident comes in, inserted or updated, where the caller, so basically the person who opened it up, they're a VIP. So to get to the caller's fields, I go to show related fields. This now shows me the fields on the caller, or basically a user record. You'll see user fields. And I'm going to pick that VIP field on the user. And I'll say, hey, if the caller VIP is true, every time I want it to run when it's true, the action I want to take, now we'll get to the actions. We can set a field value, not only on our current record, but on any field referenced. So let's take a look first at a current record update. We'll say current record here so we're clear. The current record's priority, we're going to say, is automatically going to switch to 1. not only can we statically set with a to evaluated business rule, we can dynamically map something to be the same. So here's something I could show you that with. Let's set the assigned to field, maybe as an example, to be the same as the manager of my caller. So I'm going to go show related fields. We're going to go to caller. We're going to go to their manager because it's just another user field. So now what we're doing is on that update, if the condition is met that the caller is a VIP, because this VIP true false checkbox field is true, then we're going to set the priority to 1, and we're going to set the assigned to be the same as the caller's manager. Now, this probably isn't a real example, but to get the idea across that we can, with these actions, not only do the messaging which we did before, but we can set the values dynamically or statically. So let me go ahead and save this. Let's pull up a user record for this example that we can follow, who has a manager of the system administrator and who's a VIP. Let's say David Liu here. I'm going to go over to this David user. David Liu, his manager is now going to be the system administrator, and he is going to be VIP. I'm going to check mark that box. You'll notice now when I come in to create an incident, we're just going to do a test new VIP incident. You'll notice that first of all, when I go ahead and I save, and I'm the caller, our inserted rule ran because I inserted, but priority, our other rule, it didn't run. Our assigned to is still empty. And you could see the priority is 4 as well, so it wasn't a VIP user. However, on that inserter update, where now we're going to say it's David Liu who said the VIP, you'll notice again, it does not run yet until you press that update or save. And now when it gets pushed server side, it runs. Assigned to dynamically got set to system administrator. Priority got statically set to 1. So it's a great way, this is the big functionality point 1 of business rules, to dynamically or statically set values based off other values. Now this was on this current record. Another thing we can do is actually set a referenced field to have a value. So let me show that example. I'm going to come back in to my business rule, and let's say every time a VIP user puts in a ticket, we're going to actually go to that user's field, and we're going to take their title and just change it to VIP, for example. So we're going to take that caller, I'm going to show the related fields here. We're going to take that caller's title. So we're going to go to caller user field, their title. We're actually going to set the caller's title to VIP. Now again, this doesn't make much sense, but it's to show the example that we're using a business rule that conditionally has criteria met, and the actions, it's setting, and I could do the same as to make it dynamic if I wanted to. It's setting the value of field on that referenced user record that's in the caller field, title field to VIP. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now what you're going to be able to see is, let's give it a second to save. I'm going to now check one more time on my user to show the before and after. First, when I go to user, David Liu, his current title is empty. Now I'm going to create an incident in the system where David is going to be the caller. We know he's VIP, so this is going to pass the VIP test. And when I save, it not only ran my insert, it not only ran and put in David Liu, set the assigned to sysadmin as we specified, priority to 1. But if I actually click and open David Liu's record, you'll notice his title is now VIP. So we just used the business rule based off the insert or update of record A to change a field value on record B, where record B was referenced in a reference field on record A. Great functionality for some data automation. Now there's 2 other areas that we're going to see business rules very importantly in. And the next one of that is aborting actions. Many cases I've seen where users want to stop certain functionality. Example is they want to stop IT users, ITIL users, from closing incidents. Only end users should do that, or admins on exception. So how do we do that? How do we stop ITIL users from switching the state to closed on records? The answer is, again, a business rule. I'm going to come in, going to go to Configure, and I'm going to go into Business Rules. I'm going to create a new one, this time once more. Now this new rule is going to be my ITIL close stop. What we're going to do is first when to run. So here I'm doing it based off a role, ITIL. I could actually make this really simple by just specifying a role condition. Anytime the user has the ITIL role on insert or on update, we're going to go ahead and we're going to say the actions we want to take is going to be to abort the action and to add a message telling them invalid update. Only end users are allowed to close incidents. And that's important when you abort an action to tell them why. So here, again, we're running anytime an ITIL user tries to insert or update, we're going to do this. And we don't want it to run, obviously, on every insert or update. It's only when they close. So we're going to state changes to, keep in mind, again, changes to, not is, closed. And I'm going to go ahead and submit this. You'll now notice I'm going to come into the system. I'm going to go into an incident. I'm going to click that incident and I'm going to set the state to closed as an ITIL user. When I try to make that change, the system stops me. It says invalid update, only end users are allowed to close incidents. There's my message, and there's the system saying that action's aborted. Even though it says closed here, this is just client side what I see. Server side, the record was not changed because it was aborted. You'll notice because when I reload this form, you'll see it's still at that state it was beforehand. Great functionality for getting some more process enforcement on what values can be set by what users. Now, the next big item in Geneva is, of course, the web services functionality. And we won't dive into the web services in this video. We'll add a link in the description below for where you can find a video that fully covers business rules used for web services in detail. But all the conditions for when they run would be the same. They just basically kick off a web service call on top of the message or so on. So the last item we want to take a look at is, again, expanding on the notion of those messages in context of like a confirmation screen. A lot of times in the self-service portal, some users or customers, they'd rather their end users don't see the incident form at all. They think it's a little bit confusing. They'd rather have a pretty nicely formatted blob, if you will, of text or image. And we can absolutely do that. We're going to call this our incident confirmation self-service. We're basically going to say anytime an incident is inserted and the contact type is self-service, assuming our record producer templated this value, then the action we want to take is going to be the following. We're going to add a message. But rather than just plain text, something boring, we're going to put in source code. And in this source code, I'm going to paste some content I already have. A message here regarding your incident basically has been received. And something I could even do is add in just a ton of break characters if I wanted to, a ton of space characters, just so that no one even sees the form. It's all the way pushed to the bottom. All they see is this link. And maybe I want to add a hyperlink to return to the self-service homepage. So I'll press OK for this HTML just so we can show you the rendering here. You'll notice that it's got a nice image logo I've embedded with that HTML, your simple href. I've got incident received, and maybe I want to add a hyperlink. I'll just tell them, click here to return to the self-service portal. And I'm going to make this entire text hyperlinked. We're going to just click the insert edit link, and it'll go to /home.do, for example. I'll press OK. So you can do really neat functionality here with these messages, something that's even dynamic. If you're familiar with email notifications, you'll know that if you do $, curly brace, field name, and curly brace, it'll dynamically take that value. And with business rules, it'll actually do the same. So it'll populate caller ID here with the user's caller ID. It'll put in the short description dynamically of that incident, put in the priority. And let's take a look at this in action. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to save this one. I'm going to head back to my list of business rules I had on the incident table. And the insert one, I'm going to just set this to false for now, just so we don't double run on ourselves. And I'm going to come in to my self-service portal. I'm going to go my self-service homepage. As an end user, let's do it just so that we're very thorough here. I go in and I access that record producer for that create incident. I put in my new email incident and I press submit. The system has that pop-up message there. So you'll notice it has the formatting, the HTML I specified. You'll also notice that this message box could be as large as you dictate. So technically you could put in break characters and actually have the box cover the entire screen, so the user doesn't even see this incident form. They then could be brought to a largely formatted link. Click here to return self-service portal. They click it, and it takes them back with that via that hyperlink. Really, really simple and really powerful functionality with business rules in ServiceNow Express. Other use cases I've seen business rules expand to include just more dynamic assignments. A rule where if a CI field is not empty, then set the assigned to the same as the supported by of that CI. Other examples include copying records. Let me show that one very quickly here to end today's session. You can do even neat things like copying records by just mapping every single value. So let's say we wanted to copy a child to have all the same values as its parent, for example. Well, I just come in and I go into my business rule, and I'm going to call this my child mapper. We're going to say anytime our parent field, and I'll do this on incident, anytime my parent is not empty on insert or update, the actions we're going to take is we'll set the short description same as my parent's short description. So show related fields, go into that parent field, and go into short description. Priority, same as parent's priority. So you can make yourself a source incident or source task field, whatever it may be, and just use a business rule that then maps all the values to this new field on this new form based off what that reference is. Neat applications of this includes making a record producer called a record copier. All that record producer is it takes in a reference value to a source incident. It basically creates an incident, templates, then maps that variable of source incident they defined to a source incident reference field on that record that was newly created. And then a business rule runs, just like it does here, mapping that parents or source incidents fields right to that actual one that got created. So we'll see this one in action here in a second. So parents priority short description. You could keep going with as many fields as you want, but we'll just do this. So here we're going to come into an incident record. We're going to open up that email incident. You'll notice my parent fields here. I'm going to search. I'm going to set the parent to be, let's say, this change here. And I'm going to go ahead and save it, and you'll notice it maps the values over. My short description mapped, my priority was the same, it mapped as well. Business rules in ServiceNow Express, great ways to automatically set values dynamically. You'll see that out of box for areas like location, being set to the caller's location. You'll be able to see messages that appear when records are inserted or updated that include HTML styling. And finally, the ability to board action to enforce your process and workflow. Great easy functionality, all including web service ability here with business rules in ServiceNow Express.